Okay, so this is Christine Nicholas. I'm the chair of the New York State Tourism Advisory Council, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is now 11:04 a.m. Due to public health concerns as authorized by the executive order of the governor, this meeting will be conducted virtually, and the public may listen to the meeting via webcast, and it is important that all members and staff state their full name for the record each time they speak. And with that, I will take attendance and I will call from a list of RSVPs that we have. And if you are present, please state your name. Barbara Lee Diamond Steel Spielvogel. Dan Fuller.
I'm here.
Thurman Thomas.
I'm here.
Catherine Nichols. Tom Mulroy. Ilana Petroselli. Alexander Stanton. Eleanor Tatum. I know Eleanor's here.
Yeah, here.
There you go. The Honorable Annie O'Donnell. Jose Serrano.
Hello. This is Gabriel Lowenstein from Danny O'Donnell's office. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Welcome. Jose Serrano. From I Love New York, we have Ross Levi. Rich Gagliano.
I'm here.
Great. Kelly Garofalo Wilkins.
I am here.
Anyone else from I Love New York that we may have missed?
I think the rest of our team is just listening in.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Ross. All members have been emailed a copy of the minutes, and they're also available on the ESD website. Are there any changes to the minutes? Not hearing any changes, may I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Dan Fuller
Thank you,
will move.
Eleanor.
I'll second Dan Fuller.
Thank you, Dan Fuller. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I see your green boxes light up when you say aye, so, okay. Any opposed? Okay, none opposed, so the motion carries, minutes are approved. And at this time, I'm going to please ask that everyone go on mute if not speaking, which you already have done. So, welcome, and I hope everyone and their families are healthy and safe. When we met back in May, we didn't know if we were going to be able to meet in person for this meeting, but obviously we're still adhering to the guidelines to limit the spread of COVID. So hopefully at a meeting coming up, we will be together again. Clearly, these are challenging times for the nation's tourism industry, and international tourism restrictions, necessary shutdowns, and consumer wariness have all impacted the tourism industry like nothing before. Even here in New York, we continue to operate under travel advisories requiring a 14-day quarantine for people who come from states and territories with a significantly high community-wide spread of COVID. Still, even with the ongoing crisis, our infection rate remains low thanks to the hard work of the people of New York, and New York is still among the best states in the nation when it comes to health and safety in combating COVID-19. Our state's data-driven approach for a phased reopening is one of the reasons we have been successful in keeping the infection rate low. In terms of tourism, the governor announced guidelines for seasonal fall agritourism and recreation activities, including corn mazes, pick your own fruit and vegetable operations, hay rides, and haunted houses. Various restrictions around things like capacity, social distancing, mask wearing are in place, and specific information is available on the New York Forward website. Bowling alleys were cleared to reopen in August at 50% capacity, with every other lane closed, or with physical barriers between the lanes and groups required to stay in the lane for which they are bowling. Casinos reopened in September at 25% capacity. In New York City, low-risk indoor cultural activities, including museums, aquariums, and other cultural arts, were permitted to open starting August 24th at 25% maximum occupancy with preset staggered entries, mass requirements, and traffic flow controls in place. Indoor malls reopened in September at 50% capacity. New York City restaurants resumed indoor dining at 25% capacity on September 30th with temperature checks for all patrons and contact information required to facilitate contact tracing if needed. No services allowed after midnight, bar services prohibited, and masks must be worn when not seated at a table. Guidelines will be reassessed based on data by November 1st. If infection rates do not increase, restaurants may be permitted to go up to 50% capacity. Caveat here is that businesses located in infection hotspots are subject to stricter guidelines that the governor announced earlier this week. The path to full tourism recovery is long, but we are hopeful that as long as we can keep the state's infection rate low by being smart, disciplined, and New York tough, we can keep moving in the right direction. Some tourism-related governor announcements. Even with the shutdown and phased reopening of businesses, New York State has been able to complete several projects that will allow for an improved visitor experience at destinations across the state. I'd like to highlight a few projects announced by Governor Cuomo since we last met. Jones Beach State Park completed a $6.6 million improvement, including a new mini golf course, refurbished and new golf court games, and new benches, tables, fencing, and lighting. Letchworth State Park has a new $2 million outdoor recreation center featuring table games, badminton, and pickleball courts, bocce and shuffleboard, as well as a fitness loop. The Welcome Plaza at Niagara Falls State Park was completed, which was important in creating a more seamless and welcoming connection between the park and the City of Niagara Falls Business District, ultimately helping visitors better orient with the offerings both inside and outside of the park. The grand opening of the new Sky Flyer zip line at Lake Placid is the Olympic ski jumping complex's latest year-round attraction, offering a new way to experience the stunning beauty of the Adirondacks. The grand opening of the historic Roosevelt II boathouse at Saratoga Spa State Park is part of a $2.3 million transformation project that is restoring and improving upon the grandeur of the Roosevelt baths. The completion of improvement projects at Southwick Beach State Park and Westcott Beach State Park. Upgrades at Southwick Beach feature a new bathhouse and concession building, as well as restored dunes and new green parking spaces that enhance resiliency and protection of water quality. At Westcott Beach, 8 new accessible cottages with fully equipped kitchens and full bathrooms were built on a bluff with a commanding view of the lake. The Empire State Trail continues to move toward completion and has met a major milestone in central New York with completed construction on a pedestrian bridge and a new trail connections in Onondaga County. The dedication of Marsha P. Johnson State Park, along with the East River in Brooklyn, making it the first state park in New York to honor an LGBTQ person and transgender woman of color. The state will improve park facilities and install public art celebrating Johnson's life and her role in the advancement of LGBTQ rights. I Love New York is already promoting these destinations and their improvements as opportunities for safe local recreation, and they will certainly be great assets to promote with future visitors to New York State. As for industry member updates, I want to close my report by recognizing a few members of our industry. The New York State Tourism Industry Association held its annual meeting in September, and a new board was elected. The new board consists of Chair Josiah Brown of New York Welcomes You, Vice Chairs Ken Meifert of the National Baseball Hall of Fame, and Heather Bagshway of Greene County Tourism and Film Commission, Treasurer John Offner of the Adirondack Regional Tourism Council, and Secretary Dana Kruger of Dana Events. Officer at Large Kellyanne Curtin from NYC & Company. Congrats to all the new officers. And as an ex officio Nice Tia board member, I want to personally thank those who served on the board this past year, especially outgoing Chair Natasha Caputo of Visit Westchester, for their hard work and dedication to our industry. Finally, I want to extend congratulations and a great big thank you to Rick Remsnyder from Ulster County, who recently retired. Rick was Ulster County's tourism director for 14 years, and in that time, he helped to increase visitor spending each year from 2011 to 2020. Rick was an integral member of our community. His service will be dearly missed, and we wish him the very best in whatever comes next. And I hope to see you on the golf course, Rick. That concludes my report. Are there any questions? And if you do have questions and wish to speak, please remember to state your name. I can hear somebody speaking, but very faintly. Okay. If there are no questions, then we will now hear from Ross Levi, Executive Director of Tourism, and Rich Gagliano, Senior Vice President of Marketing, who will report on I Love New York activities from the onset of COVID-19 through the phased reopening of businesses. Ross?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Christine. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, Ross.
Terrific. Thank you. Good morning to everybody. Great to be with the TAC again, at least virtually. And, you know, it's hard to remember how much was unknown when we last met in May and how much we've gone through since then, certainly as a tourism industry, but also more generally as a state and a nation, even as a planet. Throughout this crisis, our first responsibility at the New York State Division of Tourism has always been the health and safety of our I Love New York community. Even within that priority, we realize an extremely important part of our work has been supporting the New York State tourism industry. We continue to recognize the hardship that many tourism businesses face as we all navigate these unprecedented times, and we are working diligently to provide accurate and timely information on resources and relief available to our industry. Over the course of the health crisis, I Love New York has maintained constant contact with our industry partners, from state tourism industry trade associations to local tourism promotion agencies and even to the individual attractions. We have worked to provide regular COVID updates, fielded countless questions, and joined numerous industry conference calls on the state level, the national level, and the local level. Primarily, we've performed outreach and communicated with our partners on three major issues. One is around reopening policies. We've engaged with partners from across the state to ask for their informed input on what is happening in their region and what they see as unique circumstances that affect reopening. And then using this and other data, we've been working to advise on the New York Forward Plan from a tourism point of view. And our tourism partners across the state have been extremely helpful in getting that frontline perspective. We've also worked to keep our partners informed with the latest and most accurate guidance, from the initial guidance and guidelines on essential businesses through the continuing information on industry and activity reopenings. And another level that another area that we focused on has been in the area of funding. Many of our attractions and destination management organizations require funding or relief packages to cope with severely decreased revenue caused by COVID. And our policy team was quick to provide information on available relief and funding programs, from the Federal CARES Act to the New York Forward Loan Fund, to help struggling tourism businesses and organizations. And we continue to provide updates as we have those available. And then we've also tried to serve a role in helping to facilitate advocacy. Through our membership with the U.S. Travel Association, we've been able to share opportunities for New York's tourism community to advocate on a national level for the tourism industry. We have and continue to encourage all our partners to take advantage of the grassroots advocacy opportunities and tools that USTA provides to have the voices of the tourism industry heard and the needs of our industry known by our representatives in federal government. Probably the most profound example of this is around the federal relief to state and localities. As many of you know, New York State is facing a $14 billion budget deficit entirely due to the pandemic. And Governor Cuomo has been calling on Washington to deliver the funding New York State needs to offset the revenue losses. So far, Washington has failed to do so. It may be the federal government that ultimately determines the size of the state budget through whatever funding it provides, which in turn will impact everything the state funds, including tourism. So getting a second relief bill passed is crucial, and we continue to stress the importance of having our voices heard on that and other topics affecting the tourism industry. With the current international travel bans in place, we're obviously not actively promoting New York State to international markets for current travel. However, many international tour operators now have downtime they didn't have before, which presents the opportunity for education about New York State as a destination. Until our borders open back up again, we wanted to use our international offices as a resource for our TPAs to advise on the current attitudes toward traveling to New York and to hear about what can be done now to keep New York State top of mind for future visits. The I Love New York team set up a series of webinars with 4 of our international offices to provide in-country updates. Those have been very informative. For example, across the markets, there is a trend toward outdoor recreation as opposed to urban travel and individual versus group travel. Additionally, everyone should be pleased to hear that New York State has a strong reputation regarding health and safety due to the governor's worldwide exposure on his COVID-19 response. There's a sense that New York State did the right thing by putting safety first, even when the nation as a whole may not have been, and that we can be trusted that when we say it's safe to visit, it will be here in New York. Also wanted to mention about our tourism funding programs. COVID and the state's spending restrictions have necessitated us looking at these programs and adjust various policies and procedures. The tourism grants team has been processing first quarter matching funds reimbursements as they are received and completed, and providing detailed information on submitted Q2 claims so we can get them processed as completely and smoothly as possible. Likewise, the team continues to process the Market New York awards granted in round 9 of the REDC last December. We've had one-on-one conversations with dozens of grantees to ensure that their projects were still feasible and made sense in a COVID environment. Many projects have been postponed until 2021. But still, as of today, 27 of the 40 marketing working capital projects have been approved, and we continue to work with the awardees as situations with COVID change. In addition to our industry work, we have, of course, been working on consumer-focused efforts as well. And for that, I'd like to turn it over now to Rich Gagliano, our Senior Vice President of Marketing, to discuss I Love New York's consumer marketing efforts during COVID-19.
Yep, thanks, Ross, and good morning, everyone. And I share Christine and Ross's sentiment that we hope to see everyone in person sometime soon. When we last met, we were in the heart of the COVID lockdown and still primarily focusing on the messages of safety guidance. Whoever's driving the PowerPoint, yep, thanks. So like I was saying, when we last met, we were in the heart of the COVID lockdown, and we're still primarily focusing on messages of safety guidance and social distancing. While the state's made significant progress since then in keeping the virus under control, we still need to be vigilant, particularly as the state reopens wider. With that understanding, we've been able to reimagine our consumer-facing communication strategy to keep New York State top of mind in relevant ways to coincide with the phased reopening process. We've developed a number of programs that aim to bring New York State to you virtually, especially in situations when travel wasn't an option. When parks and outdoor attractions began to open, communications about safe and local recreation options were added. And most recently, we started to responsibly promote local travel and tourism within the state. And the goal of our strategy overall is to continue to support New York State tourism as best as we can, while first and foremost ensuring the health and safety of our community. So we may have talked about this last time we met at the beginning of the lockdown, but just to recap, everything we've been doing throughout this whole process, or this whole time period, has been through the lens of do no harm. And that was particularly true at the onset of the crisis. We quickly leveraged our digital tourism audience and travel media contacts to amplify the governor's safety and travel related guidance. Some examples of this are, we created a landing page on ilovenewyork.com that contained the most up-to-date COVID-19 specific information specific for tourism. We amplified safety messaging across all of our social platforms, and we would share the governor's press releases on our press page. In terms of creating virtual experiences, one of the first things we observed during this lockdown were the trend of tourism attractions developing virtual content that brought their unique experiences to people's homes. We began to reach out to our tourism partners, including TPAs and attractions across the state, to gather information on any virtual experiences they had or they were in the process of developing, and even encouraging some attractions to create new ones. We curated a list of those virtual experiences on a new I Love New York at Home page on I Love New York. We updated that daily and promoted the offerings on our social channels as well as through the press. Some of these activities included live animal cams, historic property walkthroughs, digital art and artifact collections, and streaming of live arts performances. These virtual experiences not only allowed attractions to remain top of mind among their fans, but also allowed them to possibly introduce themselves to new audiences, particularly at a time when people were starved for online content and went at home with their families. The I Love New York team also created and promoted a number of interactive original content pieces for people to engage with at home. So again, this is keeping in line with that concept of bringing tourism to you. Some examples of that were being able to bring your favorite restaurant to you. If you're unable to travel, we posted a series of recipes featuring iconic dishes associated with each of the regions across the state. We also provided you with everything you need for a perfect stay-at-home date night with regional food and drink ideas, New York State themed movie ideas, digital backgrounds from some of the most romantic spots in the state. And also for the kids, this is one of the most popular things we've done throughout the entire lockdown was we created a downloadable coloring book featuring some of New York State's most must-see attractions. This coloring book was specifically called out by the governor in one of his daily email updates, and it resulted in more than 100,000 hits to that one particular activity. We also produced 2 in-depth virtual campaigns. The first was I Love New York 360. We used previously shot footage and we were able to produce 9 360-degree virtual reality experiences that transported you across the state. Everything from a boat ride down the Erie Canal, a walk through a Long Island winery, to experiencing Niagara Falls from the deck of the Maid of the Mist. They were promoted on the I Love New York mobile app and across social media platforms. And these are really something you have to go see for yourself. This slide doesn't really do it justice. They're really cool. You can move your phone around. You can look in all different directions. So if you get a chance on the app, go to the virtual reality section and check those out if you haven't seen them already. And also, the I Love New York team partnered with attractions from across the state, and we produced a series of Live from New York Instagram Live events. And we also promoted those on our social channels in advance to drive as much traffic as possible to them. From these live videos, people could either learn the history of the Twister game from the curator of the Strong Museum in Rochester, get a cooking lesson from New York Kitchen in Canandaigua, or join a live comedy show from the National Comedy Center in Jamestown. These events drew thousands of live viewers and even more when the replays were posted on social channels. We also adapted a number of previously planned live activities to be executed virtually. For our annual Spring Path Through History Weekend, we partnered with 125 event hosts and to provide consumers with over 1,200 virtual historical experiences to engage with across the state. And in honor of Women's Equality Day and the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage, we partnered with several attractions dedicated to those who changed history for women in New York State and beyond to create an Instagram Live Leading Ladies Roundtable discussion. The panel included representatives from the Women's Rights National Historical Park, Harriet Tubman Home, the National Comedy Center, the National Baseball Hall of Fame, and the Susan B. Anthony House. All of this work had the added benefit of receiving widespread positive press attention thanks to the work of the I Love New York PR team. New York State attractions were featured in top-tier national publications such as Forbes, Lonely Planet, Travel and Leisure, USA Today, Condé Nast Traveler, and Wine Spectator, as well as scores of smaller niche outlets. And as summer progressed and consumers began to venture out of their neighborhoods, I Love New York collected and distributed information on safe opportunities for local recreation. Everything from state parks, local parks, sculpture parks, historic sites, with information on what was and wasn't open, hours of operation, and safety and health guidelines. We became the trusted source for consumers to discover safe and appropriate ways to get out and explore close to home. We work closely with our colleagues at New York State Parks and Department of Environmental Conservation on the latest information and messaging, particularly to avoid unsafe crowding at the most popular locations. And our connection, our collaboration with the departments across the state was key here. There was a lot of information coming out, a lot of websites weren't necessarily updated with the most recent information. So ilovenewyork.com became the hub for the most up-to-date and trusted information. Now I'm going to hand it back to Ross, and he's going to walk through some of the other planned activities we had executed virtually or otherwise during this lockdown.
Thank you, Rich. Yeah, while much of our work has obviously been specifically geared around the tourism needs promoted or prompted by COVID, we're pleased that we were able to move forward with some of our long-term programs that have been in the hopper and development for a while. A great example of this is our Accessible New York Travel program, which you've heard discussed at prior TAC meetings. We debuted the new Accessible New York Hub on ilovenewyork.com on the 30th anniversary of the American with Disabilities Act. It features more than 100 attraction listings that can be sorted by category, location, and accessible amenities, including blind and low vision, cognitive and autism spectrum, deaf and hearing loss, and mobility and wheelchair access. It also contains new editorial content that highlights special programming for people with accessibility needs and offers travel inspiration, including a firsthand account from Corey Lee. He's a travel blogger who offers his perspective from his experience in a wheelchair. We've been told by the experts in the field that this is one of the most comprehensive statewide accessibility guides in the country to date, and we look forward to continuing to build on the progress we've made so far by adding additional attractions and curating additional experiences. This, on your screen now, you can see a little bit of a demo of the website and what it actually looks like, but to have the full experience, I highly encourage folks to go to ilovenewyork.com and look for the accessibility tourism section, and you could play around yourself and see all that's there and the information that's available to people. It being October, we are obviously fully into our fall season, which is when some of our most popular annual initiatives take place. And again, we were able to adjust those to ensure safety as we responsibly promote local fall travel. We've launched the ever popular Fall Foliage campaign in September. In addition to creating a landing page with a weekly report and advising the press, this year the digital team recruited talented Instagrammers from around New York State to help capture and share photos of our unparalleled, colorful landscapes. And to expand the reach of our leaf watching community, the digital team created a Meet the Peepers blog and are posting their content on our social media channels. To commemorate International Underground Railroad Month here in September, or just this past September, we did some work around that. But actually, before I talk about that, we also want to let you know about some national coverage we received for the Leaf Peepers program. There was a live interview with the Weather Channel that was conducted. We were thrilled to get that national coverage. We have a shortened, edited version of that to show you right now.
Had it in its title of official leaf paper. Ross Levi joins us this morning. Ross is the Executive Director and Vice President of the Division of Tourism at Empire State Development. Thanks for joining us, Ross. And how are you managing the rush of people that want to see the sites in the middle of what we have now, the global COVID-19 pandemic?
Yeah, it's a challenge. This is a very different year. We're not able to welcome the faraway visitors that we normally have every year. But at the very least, we are bringing New York foliage to them. They can go to ilovenewyork.com, follow the I Love New York social media. We have videos, we have photos, we have blogs, so that at the very least, folks can experience it that way. Also, people who are here in New York State and nearby, there are safe ways to experience the leaves and the foliage here in New York, as long as they stay socially distant, wear a mask. You can hike, you can bike, you can take a gondola ride, you can take a scenic train or boat ride. There's a lot of ways to see the foliage. Well, the good news about New York is we have the longest foliage season of any state in the nation, that basically any weekend between late September, early November, there's somewhere in New York State that's having great foliage. And so literally, whether you're in Niagara Falls and seeing the foliage over the falls, whether you're at a Finger Lakes winery, whether you're at a historic home in the Hudson Valley, Long Island beaches, even New York City, people don't think of. But you mentioned certainly the Adirondacks, going to the peak of Whiteface Mountain, riding up the Veterans Memorial Highway to the nearly 5,000-foot summit in the Catskills, taking a gondola ride at Bel Air Mountain, the Letchworth State Park, which was in just the last few years rated the #1 favorite state park. It's called the Grand Canyon of the East and has a 17-mile gorge running through it. So there's lots of places.
All right, really, really quick.
So that that gives you a pretty good sense of the piece. It ran about 3.5 minutes or so. So we were thrilled to have that live coverage of our program on national TV. I was mentioning about Underground Railroad Month, which was this past September. New York officially designated that for the first time with a proclamation by the governor. And so to be part of that, we launched a new Underground Railroad Month campaign. It featured a new landing page to highlight the dozens of historical attractions in New York State connected to the Underground Railroad. We ran weekly social media posts spotlighting the attractions that tell the story of New York's nationally significant role in the operation of the railroad. And the commemoration culminated in a Facebook Watch online video event that featured a panel of experts from New York State Underground Railroad sites. Also along the history theme, Fall Path Through History Weekend is this coming weekend, October 10th through 12th. And again, had to be adjusted from what we do in a normal year because of COVID, and will feature a mix of virtual events, online events, and safe local site visitation, places you could go that are open right now. In addition to the changes to the weekend format, we were able to migrate the Path Through History program entirely onto the ilovenewyork.com website platform from the standalone platform it was on since its inception. On the back end, this change is important to allow for greater functionality for the participating sites and our staff. And for the consumer, it will allow for a more seamless experience to go between heritage tourism and other New York State visitor information, as well as increased exposure and engagement for the program. So those were some of the sort of regularized activities that we were able to continue. And now Rich can continue talking more about consumer marketing efforts.
Thanks, Ross. So I Love New York team, we've also been working to support the actual reopening of attractions by informing consumers on where and how they can safely experience New York State. This was especially important in New York City since they were behind the other regions in reopenings. As New York City indoor cultural activities were able to resume, we worked closely with the New York State Council for the Arts to develop and promote a New York City cultural institution reopening guide consisting of a blog post and social media content explaining what's going on in New York City's premier cultural institutions as they start the reopening process. We also developed for all of New York State a local travel guide that we posted on ilovenewyork.com and promoted with social media and curated with curated day trip and overnight trip ideas for each region of the state. This gave us the opportunity to start talking about traditional tourism again, but in a limited and responsible way. The key message here was that there are plenty of world-class tourism attractions accessible in each region without having to travel long distances. And just a bit on how we continue to move forward right now while this situation is still in flux. While we continue to move through the reopening process, the overall COVID and public health situation is constantly monitored due to its evolving nature. As various businesses and industries continue to reopen, keeping the virus under control still remains the state's primary focus. To provide as much support for the tourism industry as possible during this period, I Love New York team will continue to communicate to the public the latest regarding tourism-related reopenings and restrictions, as well as provide safe and local tourism opportunities that align with this guidance. And through our own channels, we'll continue to keep New York State tourism top of mind with relevant seasonal communications. How our consumer-facing communications approach continues to evolve will be guided in part by the needs of the industry and the overall statewide COVID situation. Throughout the lockdown and the reopening process, we remain in close contact with the TPAs regarding their regionally specific insights and needs. We also continue to monitor state and industry-wide tourism performance data, as well as consumer insights and sentiment regarding New York State as a travel destination and overall travel-related insights. It's important with all public-facing communications that we strike a balance between supporting the industry and keeping in mind the actual capacity of the regions and attractions can safely handle. While we all continue to navigate this unprecedented situation, our goal is to set our state tourism partners up for as much success as possible and keep New York State in a position to maintain its place as a world-class travel destination. I'm going to hand it back to Christine now.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Thanks, Rich. What I wanted to just see if anyone has joined us late into the meeting, if you could please state your name. We took attendance already, but it was early on.
Hey, it's Catherine Nichols.
Hi, Catherine, welcome.
Thanks, Christine. Sorry.
No, thanks for joining us. It's great to see your name and hope to see you soon.
You as well, and just a thanks for the collaboration on behalf of the team at NYSCA in getting the word out about the arts and cultural organizations reopening. So greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Does any of our TAC members have any new business that they wish to share? I know everybody's a little shy with this format.
Christine?
Hi, Eleanor.
Hi, yes, Eleanor Tatum here. Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about the hiking and the outdoor activities and some of the issues that are coming up with COVID and the response from the local communities. There have been a lot of issues with local communities really getting upset with all the people from downstate coming up. And local communities have had problems with all through the Adirondacks and through the Catskills with parking issues and issues of garbage on the trails. And I'm wondering if I Love New York can do some more when it comes to teaching people about etiquette.
Right.
When it comes to what they're doing when they're going hiking. I also know that the rangers have had a huge increase in the amount of rescues that they've had to do because of people not being prepared out there and taking on hikes that they are that they just cannot tackle because they're not hikers. Being caught out there in the wilderness, without water, without the proper attire, and things like that. And so I'm just wondering what can be done, because while the outdoors is amazing and should be accessible to everyone, there are people getting hurt out there. And then there are also, on some of these websites, I mean, there's some really nasty things being written about city folks. And I think there needs to be a way to introduce people to the outdoors in a safe and friendly way, rather than a very unwelcoming way.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
I take your point. Yeah, it's a good problem to have in a sense, but we want to make sure that everybody is, because it means that people are actually hiking and going to the state parks, but we want their experience to be second to none.
But at the same time, there are places and local people that are no longer allowed to use their local areas because they've been completely closed down. So for instance, I have a place up near Saugerties, New York, and there's a place called the Big Deep, which locals have used for decades. It has been completely closed down since COVID started because of it getting so much press early on and over the years that people from all over came and abused it. And so the town of Woodstock closed it down because people did not take care of it. And that's something that I heard has gone on all over the place. So while it's a good problem that people are coming out and using our natural resources, it's not a good thing when they start getting closed down because there's too much use.
Yeah, this is Ross. Our colleagues over at DEC have been working on this a whole lot, and state parks as well, so that whether it's the Adirondacks, the Catskills, the state parks, this has been an issue. And we have been working collaboratively and staying in very close touch with them to amplify their efforts. So for example, on the I Love New York blog, we did a whole article on how to be a good steward when you're out there hiking. We continue to amplify that on our social media. Whenever we talk about outdoor recreation, we obviously talk about the COVID restrictions, and we also talk about the idea of, as you're referencing, Eleanor, the idea of being able to safely and responsibly enjoy the state. Because you're right, it's one of the things that has happened in a good way is people have experienced parts of New York State they've never had before. But to your point, that can lead to problems as well. So it's an important effort to educate the public.
Right. Maybe Rich and Ross, we could also think about, there could be a fun way of educating. I've seen some like the videos that the governor did early on with wearing a mask. There could be web ads where we remind people to pick up their trash and to be smart about hiking. Because I think what Eleanor is saying is important, and also safety first, right? So we should probably be proactive on it. So maybe we can discuss that and see what we can come up with.
Absolutely. Yep. I think there are a number of creative ways we can get this message out.
And I'd be happy to help if I can.
Yes, of course. Thanks, Eleanor. Okay, anybody else with any other business that they want to bring forward? Okay.
Hi, Christine. I just have two
Yes, Kelly.
comments for the record that were sent in. And the first is from the New York State Tourism Industry Association, and they will be presenting the Destination of New York State Travel, Tourism, Hospitality, and Culinary College Scholarship Auction online for the first time in 30 years. Because the auction, which is normally done in person at their annual conference, will be online, the destinations offering auction packages will receive substantial consumer visibility while simultaneously providing financial resources to NYSTIA's workforce development initiatives. The fund raised from the auction will continue to benefit tuition and internship scholarships for New York State students, and the destination packages featured in this year's event will benefit from social media, newsletter, and website support from many of the New York State Tourism Industry Association members. And if you have more information or would like more information, please contact Bob Provost directly with any questions and concerns. And the second is just to mention that the Maid of the Mist has launched their all-electric fleet, the first of the kind in the US. And for more information, you can check out that press release.
Thanks, Kelly. Sounds exciting. Anything else? Okay, well then I think we can wrap up. I'm going to just remind you that our next scheduled meeting is for Monday, November 16th at 11 a.m. And wouldn't that be nice if it could take place in person? But I do want to thank you all for your time and your efforts to promote tourism during this very tricky part of this very tricky time. I do know that we have, as a family, have become tourists in our own state, and we were just in Kingston this week and apple picking, and I encourage you all to get out there because it truly is beautiful, and there's no state more beautiful than New York. So everyone stay healthy and stay safe, and the meeting is officially adjourned now at 11:48 a.m. Thank you all.
Thank you, Christine.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you, Ross.
Thank you.